Good morning and welcome to a special LinkedIn event live from San Diego. And we're here at WSIA. It's a beautiful day. We're happy to be back. Tell me about what a broker and carrier partnership looks like to you. Why don't we start with Jeff?
To me, it's one where there's trust, communication, and responsiveness. Underwriters today are busier than ever. They can't possibly get to every account. So it's really important that you learn the underwriter's appetite and you're sending them opportunities that fit that appetite, and you build credibility that way. And I think oftentimes deals come in last minute, so you really need to have a strong relationship with somebody where you can call them and communicate to them that you really need their help, and the only way to do that is if you have a track record with them in a relationship. So.
Yeah, and that takes time, obviously, right?
Sure does.
Mary, how about you?
Yeah, from my standpoint, very similar. I mean, really, to develop those relationships, it takes collaboration, working together over time. You build up that trust, and really, that's the key to that long-term relationship: is that trust, collaboration, and you want to get to the a point in your careers where you can call that person and candidly tell them if there's something that you need from them. That broker, they can work it out based on kind of that relationship you've built over time.
Let's get specific a little bit. Maria, tell me about a deal maybe you worked together with Mary on and how that partnership led to mutual success.
I was going to say, I think we started on this deal a year ago. This is a good example. It's actually one of my biggest accounts, and it did require a lot of time to invest in the underwriting and claims review. There was even some actuarial review and a lot of manuscripting, and I don't think we would have gotten it done if we didn't have the relationship that Mary and I have. And there was a lot of, the word trust involved, and I knew that we were going to invest the time and we were going to come up with a decision that even though the rates were pretty high, we thought we could sell it to my client, and it wound up being a nice win for us last year.
Definitely. Just an example, we've worked together for so long and we've built that trust over time. So when Maria came to us with that opportunity, we were open to listening to what she needed from us, and it was more of a difficult risk profile, but since we had worked together for so long and we did have that trust, we were able to come to terms that made sense for us. It took a lot of work, obviously, to get it done. We wanted to make sure we were comfortable with it, but it really was that relationship that we had, the foundation that helped us build from there to develop that, to really get to that next step and bind the account.
That's great. Tirzah, how about you?
What comes to mind is my first account working with Jeff. Busy day, Jeff calls me like 3 times, freaking out. I need this done right now. I'm like, all right, give me a second. Give me like 3 hours. Let me look at the account. I promise I will come back to you with a yes, no, maybe whatever I'm going to do. 3 hours later, probably earlier than that, I'm like, all right, here's what I can do. What do you think? And we end up binding the account. And from that, we have like an amazing hit ratio just because we're honest with each other. We're saying, this is what I can do. This is my time constraint. I can do this for you. I can't do this for you. And we're not, kind of beating around the bush with what we can do.
So it's a good segue. So, Jeff, how has Tirzah's approach and Argo's approach really been beneficial to you and the organization?
It's really been consistent, right? A lot of carriers out there are trying to find ways to say no, or they'll write a risk and then come renewal, they'll increase pricing or add on some punitive exclusions that just don't work. And that's just not the case with Argo. They want to write deals, they want to be around for a while, they want to stay on an account, they want a partner, and that's something that I had with Tirzah, so it's very special.
Tirzah, do you remember anything about these deals that go on?
Yeah, of course. Jeff is always texting, calling, saying like, what can we do? What can we get done? And, I try to be honest and upfront with him and try to give him a response pretty quickly.
So let's talk about the communication, break it down a little bit. What aspects of communication are most important for you when you're building trust and building these successful partnerships? There's so many parts of it. There's the in-person conversation, there's longevity to it, right? Mary, tell me about some of the most important pieces of communication.
I think in any situation, it's important to get ahead of any decisions or changes that you might be making on behalf of a book of business. So, if you wanted to make some changes, you need to get well ahead of. This is very fascinating to me. Sorry.
They're building strong bonds.
They are. I love it. Yeah, really. So if you're going to make some changes to your book, you have some issues in your portfolios. You want to make changes. It's really important that you get ahead of those situations with your brokers. It's really important that you give them ample notice. You explain to them why you're making the decision that you're making, and that really just helps forge that. It really is. It develops that respect between the broker and the underwriter to get ahead of it, be honest, and give them the rationale behind your decisions, and giving them ample time.
Right.
And always working to help them. There's situations, where I have, had to make some changes to account, but if they need more time, I'll give you an extension, or I can work it out with you somehow that you're able to work something out with your client. So it's really having that type of discussion, but getting well ahead of those communications.
Right. And Tirzah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely just trying to find like a mutual bond is something that I look for when I'm starting a new relationship with a broker. What can we, bond over so that it's easier for me to, no offense, say no to him, because
Sure.
I'll start the conversation off with, hey, how'd your team do? Oh yeah, by the way, I don't have great news for you. So just having that relationship that can kind of coat the bad news
Right.
is definitely important.
It's not all transactional, right? There's
Exactly.
so much personal touch to it.
Right.
Well, you bring up a good point, which sometimes is not. It's always great news, right?
Yes.
Sometimes there's bad news. And speaking as both carriers, brokers, underwriters, in your 25 or so years that you've been working together, I'm sure not everything has been great news. So Mary, tell me about a time maybe when you had to deliver some tough news.
Yeah, I mean, listen, throughout your career, you're going to get in situations where you're going to have to make changes to the portfolio. And what I found, and I always make sure in those situations that I own that message and I own it. I make sure that, as a leader of a group, you want to make sure that you're delivering the message to the leaders, those working on the accounts as well, but getting that message out, not leaving it to the more junior underwriters to deliver the message, getting ahead of it, but also being that person to own that message and explaining why. Again, it's similar to my answer before, but it varies depending on the situation, but I just have always made sure that I'm the one calling as a leader of the group to make sure I'm giving ample rationale, and just really, again, it's cementing and solidifying the relationship for the long term.
Yeah. And Maria, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I always like to tell people if you have bad news and you have to give it to us, just do it as early as you can, because we are solution finders and we can't get our clients solutions if we don't know what the problem is until the 11th hour. I also find it really helpful if my markets kind of guide me, like if they know of a solution, even if it's outside their company. We do value people pointing us in the right direction, like, hey, I know somebody had a deal like this is what they did with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a two-way street, so that does go a long way.
Let's stay with you for a second. Why is it important to have these long-term relationships with Mary and others that they'll be creative and really come up with a solution for you, where it's not just another same deal, right? Where you might have something a little more difficult, but you can trust someone else that can help.
I was going to say, I think we just work in an environment where we're always doing different things. We're never working on the same deal 2 days in a row. So if we know that we're working with people that have built relationships with, we're going to be able to find some unique ways of writing deals that maybe we wouldn't have done if we were writing on the same type of policy every single day in and day out.
Right.
That's part of it. I also think our business is pretty interesting, and we do learn from each other, and we learn from the deals that maybe you've worked on that I haven't seen, and it is very collaborative. So I do feel like I learn not just from the people I work with, but the markets that I work with. So that's valuable to me.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, because of the relationship I have with Tirzah, she's always going above and beyond to find a way to do a deal. Instead of just saying no, she gets creative. Hey, how about we think about carving out an exposure or sublimiting a certain coverage or raising the deductible? Let's find a way to put terms on the table. And as a broker, that's really important because we have to deliver to our clients, and having something is better than going to the table with absolutely nothing.
And it's funny what Mary or Maria was saying about, leading you in a direction of a different market, because I've done that for Jeff plenty of times where I'm like, I can do the GL, I can't do the excess, but go to so-and-so company, and found it both. So, yeah.
You
Win-win.
make any of his commission on that deal?
I didn't, but I mean,
We have dinner tonight, so we'll
Well, it's great. And speaking of dinner tonight, right? We're at WSIA. It's a great conference. A lot of relationships might start here, or they're built, and people get to see each other they maybe haven't seen in a while. So this question's for the full panel, and we'll start with Tirzah because you're right next to me. So tell me about how this type of conference and ones like WSIA are just so important to that relationship building.
yeah, I mean, we're in the age of, virtual meetings and everything. And yeah, you can build a relationship, but there's something about being in person with someone and, giving them a high five and celebrating your wins and commiserating your losses in person that just adds to that deeper connection and makes it easier for you to work together going forward.
Jeff?
I couldn't agree more. And to echo that, when you're with somebody and you're having a meal, you're joking, you're laughing, it's not something that is easily done over the phone or on a Zoom call because you don't feel that energy in the body language of the person. So events like this are very important for that reason.
Great. And Mary?
Yeah, I love just even seeing other markets and getting market intelligence and just really reconnecting, find out what's going on. It really helps, not only to be with your brokers, but just being in the industry to find out what they're seeing and getting all that information. You can't do that in your day-to-day job when you're working in the office and just around your peers. So it's a really great opportunity not only to see your brokers in person, like they were saying, but just also to get just general industry information from other carriers.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is I do feel that we spend so much time at work, and we do wind up building pretty substantial relationships with the people that we do business with. I mean, they become friends, they become like family, and coming to these events, it is almost like being at a family reunion, right?
Totally, yeah.
So I've always enjoyed that.
Great. And let's think about some advice maybe for the people that are attending for the first time or some early career professionals. What would you tell them when they're coming to an event like this, or just really in general for building relationships going through? Jeff, why don't we start down here?
I think the best advice I would have for somebody is to talk to all the various divisions, underwriting, claims, the various lines of business. Just learn as much as you can, and you never know who you're going to end up working with one day. So I think it's really important to talk to your colleagues, but also your competitors, because you never know. It's a really small industry.
That's right. Tirzah?
I think the best piece of advice I got when I was first starting my career was when you go into an office that you've never met anyone before, try to take notes on business cards about connections that you've made with that person so that when they send you a submission later, you can go back in your note and say, oh yeah, their kid had a soccer game. Hey, how's your kid's soccer game before you get into the weeds of the account? It just makes the transaction a little more personal and not as transactional.
Right. Maria?
I mean, I do that similar thing with like markets. I try to remember the stuff that people want to see as far as submissions wise. So try to remember someone's appetite. I think people appreciate when you're sending them business that they really want to see and you're not just shotgunning submissions out the door. But as far as a new person starting out, I always say just ask a lot of questions, be a sponge, say yes to everything. I mean, you're young. This is the time to get out and meet people and get to know what other people, like you said, do for a living. So you learn kind of the parts of the business that you really enjoy.
Yeah. I obviously agree with everyone here on the panel, but and I would just add definitely asking questions and getting outside of your comfort zone, because when you're new, you're not expected to know it all. So it should be people expect that you would ask questions. Don't be afraid. And I think it's just really important when you're starting out, really try to master the job in front of you first. I think we get ahead of ourselves. We all do this. We get ahead of ourselves thinking about our next step. But I think it's really important that you master what's in front of you, because that's what you're going to be known for by your broker partners and people in the industry. Well, that person's really sharp. They know their product line. So really take the time to master what's in front of you before you look to get to that next step. I always like to say to people, you should be actually getting kind of bored. Like, all right, I've been doing this long enough, I need more. So when you're at that stage, I think you're ready for more, but you really look to focus on learning what's right in front of you, ask a lot of questions, and then really you'll find that your reputation helps you along that process.
Right. No, all good advice. Appreciate that. We do have a couple questions that came through the chat, so I'm going to start with the first one here, and this one's from Jen. Have you had an important relationship end, and how have you dealt with that? Ooh, difficult. Jeff?
That's a great question. I think from a wholesale perspective, you'll deal with certain retailers and you will get a submission and it'll be just a simple quote app and please quote. It'll be very cold and you're quoting a lot of things but not binding. So the most difficult thing to do as a wholesaler is to actually fire a retailer because they're just spinning your wheels and it doesn't seem like there's a good fit. But there's a way to deliver the message where it's not offensive. You just say, hey, here are the facts. It doesn't seem like we're aligned. It doesn't seem like a good fit. Maybe we should go in other directions. So you could be politically correct about it, but still accomplish what you're looking to accomplish.
Right. Tirzah, any?
Honestly, he kind of hit everything there.
Okay.
That was perfect. Nothing to add.
Maria, Mary?
I mean, I guess I could see it from both sides where maybe you're ending a relationship with a carrier. To me, that could be an opportunity to develop a relationship with a carrier that you don't normally work with a lot. So I always think anytime something ends, maybe that's the beginning for another market. So
Sure. Mary, think to
Trying
add?
to think if I've had relationships end. I don't know necessarily. There's just been some periods of time where they've cooled off a bit and there's been some heated discussions along the way, but always keeping that door open. So even if, you always want to make sure we always say don't burn any bridges, right? So if you have to, you do have a difficult situation and you do have to part ways, even on an account that might be high profile, that's, the client's obviously not happy, you just always make sure to keep some kind of door open that you can re-engage in the future. Because it's a small industry and you never know when you might cross paths or really want to be part of that risk again and need to work with those the client and the broker again. So
Right. No, good. I have another question here. This one's from Nicole. So, any advice for making an existing relationship more personal and less transactional? Mary, we'll start down this way.
you have to put time and effort in, and Tirzah said this. Just getting to know a little bit about the person. It really, at the end of the day, people do business with who they like, right? So you have to try and find some kind of bond, and if it doesn't, it would probably require face-to-face type meetings, because when you meet in person, it really changes the dynamic of the relationship. So really just trying to find some kind of common denominator to start with, and meeting in person, you can build off there. And then be honest with that person. I'd love to do more with you. What can we do to build our relationship?
Maria?
I was just going to say, you can always try and find out what the hobbies are of that person and try to do an event with them, like a one-on-one, find out what they really like, whether it's golf or go out to dinner or anything like that. If you could find a common ground, I think you could help to build that relationship, make it more personal.
Right.
I think one thing to add is when I'm working with a new client, I kind of try to get to know them and see kind of how they want to work. Some people just want to get down to business. And I am the type of person where I like to be friends with everyone, but I can't take it personally if they just want to make the deal work. So I kind of think that you should kind of set those expectations at the beginning and say, hey, how do you work? Do you want to email? Do you want to call? Do you want to text? Just make sure you kind of have that barrier out of the way in the beginning.
Right, just be adaptable to that person, sure. And Jeff, you want to finish this out?
I don't think I could add much more. I think that was excellent. Good job, ladies.
That's great. And then the last question, we'll wrap this up. So this one's from Michaela. How often would you say you should be connecting with your partners in a meaningful way? Jeff?
It depends. I mean, it depends on what deals you're working on that's on your desk. It's always a balance, right? If you feel disconnected, maybe that's a good opportunity to pick up the phone and call. I feel like a lot of people today are on email a lot, and they're not really picking up the phone or getting together. So I think you just got to make the effort, and if something feels a little cold, then try to warm it up a little bit.
Right. Tirzah?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the partnership, right? Jeff and I probably talk a lot. Maybe once a week we're texting each other back and forth about, something, even if we're not working on a deal. I know he needs my attention, so I'm letting him know, I'm here for you. So if you need something, let me know. But I understand if you don't have anything I can work on right now.
Right.
I think it comes in waves. I think there'll be certain markets that I work with pretty regularly and I talk to them all year round, and then there's certain carriers I only work with when certain renewals come up. So I think it really depends on the relationship at hand.
Yeah, and I think It should be something that is deliberate in your mind. So looking at, I say quarter by quarter, like who like, assessing for the quarter, who haven't I seen? Let me make sure that I'm reaching out, and you could kind of build your schedule around that. So this way you can make sure that you're not neglecting any certain partnership throughout. So that's why you do an assessment quarterly, just to make sure that you're like, hey, wait, obviously conference season, we see each other a lot more often, but then there's times throughout the year you're not. So if you can kind of do an assessment and look ahead and just make sure that you're making that contact.
And even back to Tirzah's point, I mean, I also think it really depends on the person themselves. They may not want to see you, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to force it.
Well, it was great seeing everybody here. I appreciate the panel. Great advice for everybody. You've built great relationships. Very appreciative of that. So thank you, everybody, for watching, for sending in questions. Stay tuned for more from Argo, and everybody enjoy WSIA. If you're here, thank you so much.